Transitions are really important in your songs, and some producers don't even care about them. Listen, for example, to this piece over here without any transition element in it. It sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? The drop simply ends. And listen to this now with all the transition elements in it. Transitions are all about smoothing the elements that you have in your drop and also creating tension from one section to the other. And that's what we're going to learn today in this video. We're not going to talk about build-ups today, but if that's something that you'd be interested in seeing in a video, leave it here in the comments so I can make a video about this as well. But now let's get down to business and let's get started with this tutorial. Let's go. The first thing that I recommend to smooth your transitions a little bit more is to cut the kick by the end of your drops or by the end of your 8-bar loops. You can do this either by cutting the kick entirely or just by low cutting it with a filter, but I prefer to cut it entirely. The idea here is to soften the transition and make this merge a little bit better with the break. Listen how it sounds like when you cut the last 2 kicks from this transition. You can see that just cutting the last 2 already softens the transition a little bit more, but you can cut even more. Sometimes I cut even 4 bars of the kick, but just listen how this sounds when we cut 2 bars of this kick. Much better, right? The transition feels a bit smoother and it sounds a lot better when we move from one section to another. And you can do this in the middle of your drops as well. Every time that you have a big change or you add a more dramatic element like a lead or a vocal, listen, for example, to what happens when we cut the kick in the middle of the drop as well. This cut helps by making the change a bit softer and also by closing the 8-bar loop and moving on to the next one as well. Honestly, I do this for every 8-bar loop in my track and I recommend you doing as well. Now let's go into other elements that we can smooth out in this transition, and let's start with smoothing our bass. There's a lot of power coming from your bass as well in this transition. So why not get rid of it as well? But we're not deleting it as we did with the kick. We're just slowly taking it out with a filter. So for you to be able to do this, we're going to pick over here in Ableton a 12 dB cut, and we're going to do an automation that starts at the bottom and goes around 400 to 600 Hertz, as you can see it over here. Listen to how this sounds like. Sounds much better, right? Because essentially what we're doing, we're softening the bass from a section that has a lot of bass to a section that doesn't have any bass at all. So we're making this transition a little bit smoother instead of having a big drop of bass by the end of the transition as well. And then you can ask me, Leo, but what if I have a bass in my break? What should I do? Listen to this transition again, but now if we had a bass in the beginning of the break as well. It's still okay, but now that we've filtered the bass at the end of the drop and we have a bass in the beginning of the break, it feels a bit abrupt and like the bass is coming out of nowhere. And that makes the transition a bit strange, which is essentially what we don't want. So how can we solve this? Essentially, for these situations, what I like doing is using something like a sweep impact. A sweep impact is essentially an impact with a sweep before it as well. Listen to how it would sound like. This sweep impact really helps because it creates tension before the real impact comes along, and that helps connect the drop and the break as well. However, listen how it would sound like if we only had an impact without the sweep over there. It sounds too abrupt again, and that's why I love the sweep impact. It helps a lot by connecting the two sections. And I use this kind of element not only when I have a bass in the break, but also in multiple times when I'm transitioning from the drop to the break as well. Now that we've cleaned a little bit of the low end and we created a little bit of tension also in the sound, let's make more tension in this transition from the drop to the break because it's gonna sound a bit better. In addition to sweep impacts, one element that I really love adding to my songs are white noise sweeps and also cymbals crashes, and they add a lot to the song. now we're connecting not only the low end with the impact, but also the high end with the sweeps and the crashes, and it just sounds a lot better. But listen also how there's a lot of percussions going until the end of the drop, and then everything just suddenly stops. So why not clean them as well? And let's move to our next point in this video. At the same time that we had a problem with the low end and we smoothed it out to the break, we have a lot of high end over here in this percussions. As you can see over here in Ableton, we have a lot of percussions going through all the way till the start of the drop, and then they all suddenly disappear at the start of the break. So again, why not filter them? We're gonna pick over here a 12 dB high cut now, and we're just gonna slightly filter it away so it feels a little bit smoother in the transition as well. You can see it in the automation that we go all the way from the top to around 2000 Hertz, and this is how it sounds like. Feels much better, right? It feels like we're closing one section and we're going to a new section of the break, which just feels amazing in the transition. But there are a few other elements that I like adding to my transitions to enhance and make this transition even fuller. As covered in the past video about ear candies, I love adding drum fills and also arp fills to enhance the transitions by the end of 8 bars, and especially by the end of the drop. I just love how these elements help to fill the gap and also to close a section and also start a new section in the song. Listen to how it sounds like when we add the arp fills and also the drum fills. Everything just ties amazingly together, doesn't it? I just love adding these elements because they make the song a little bit more interesting, and they also help to make the song a bit cooler to listen to. But we also need to add a little bit of tension to your song to make your listener a bit more excited to keep on listening from the drop to the break. And we can do this by adding risers to your songs, as we're gonna cover in the next part of the video. I love adding risers to my transitions because they create a lot of tension in the transition, but they don't need to be those big EDM kind of transitions like something like this. No. Just something really subtle, just to add a little bit of tension, like something like this. These risers make the transition a bit more exciting than the previous white noise sweeps and crashes because they add a little extra touch of tension that it's really helpful to intensify your transition. If you look at my project, for example, you can see it over here that I use before the drop, in the build-up, and at the end of the drop as well, because they really help create that tension and make the listener interested in what's coming next. Therefore, don't forget to use them in your songs because they really help adding that extra touch of tension in your transitions as well. Another kind of element that I use are snare rolls, as you can listen over here. These are used mostly during build-ups and bridges, but I love using them during the transitions from drops to breaks as well. Again, the idea with them is to intensify the tension of the transition, and there are a few things that we're doing to make sure this is happening. First, we're opening the cutoff with this automation over here. Second, we're clearing the low end with this automation over here so we don't have that low end conflict as we had before. And third, we're adding reverb with plugins like Endless Mile by Data Life or Infinite by Tourum to intensify this tension and make this transition even better. And all these elements all contribute to make this transition smoother and also with a little bit more tension, so we don't go from a drop too abruptly to the break. Now, if you want to discover more about ear candies, you can watch this video over here. Or if you want to see how Ben Bomer uses ear candies, you can watch this video over here. And I hope you liked the video, and I hope to see you in the next Abstrakt video next week. Ciao.